A wild week 5 in the books, and this was a huge weekend in college football. A lot of surprises, a lot of big games, a lot of close finishes, overtime games. I don't know how many overtime games we had this weekend. There was a bunch, including 2 on Friday night. We kicked things off with that Florida State-Virginia game. That was a great game. Arizona State, TCU was a great game. Then we saw Oregon State, Houston go to overtime. That was just on Friday night. And then, of course, the huge games we had yesterday. So it was a huge weekend, and we're going to get into my 5 takeaways here, and we'll start in the SEC. All right, Alabama has figured it out, and this could be the team to beat in the SEC. We knew the talent on this roster. I believe I had them evaluated in the preseason as the most talented, well, behind Texas. I had Texas as the most talented roster, Alabama right behind them. And then, of course, the Florida State game happened, and everyone starts to question this Alabama team. And, after Florida State lost to Virginia, I started thinking, maybe Florida State's not that great, and maybe Alabama's not that great. So I was really kind of thinking maybe Georgia takes care of business in this game, but Alabama, for whatever reason, they just have Georgia's number. But they look like the better team in this game. The passing game was had a lot more rhythm than the Georgia passing game. Now, Georgia did find some things in the run game in this one, but a missed opportunity with that drop pass. Remember, Ryan Williams dropped a pass in the first half that should have been a touchdown. So it was a pretty even matchup. Again, I just felt like Ty Simpson in this passing game for Alabama was the difference. And now, this is a much better passing game than what they had last season with Jalen Milroe. No doubt about that. Now, of course, you lose his running ability, so this team's not as good at running the football. But this passing game is very good. The defense is talented. Again, the secondary, I thought, played really, really well in this game. They did give up some plays in the run. But when you look at the SEC, I don't know if there's an elite team in this conference this year. There's a lot of really good teams, and I think Alabama might be the best of those teams. Texas we're still kind of trying to figure out Texas. All we've had to go off of is that Ohio State game where Arch Manning played horrible. They still have a lot of potential. Texas A&M has looked really good so far. That win over Notre Dame continues to look better and better after you see Notre Dame go out and just destroy Arkansas. Their defense completely locked up Auburn. I mean, that was a very impressive performance by their defense. That game really, I know the scoreboard made it seem like it was a close game. If you watch that game, it really wasn't close. Texas A&M dominated that game. They had a bazillion penalties, and it just kind of kept messing them up. And Auburn's only points was because of an interception where the A&M guy kind of bounced off of him, and it was kind of a fluky thing there. But Texas A&M looks really good. So again, I'm trying to find out about Texas. Georgia's still a good football team. Don't get me wrong. They might bounce back. They might win the SEC. Tennessee has looked really good so far. So there are a lot of really good teams. Let's don't forget about Ole Miss. Huge win over LSU. LSU continues to struggle on offense. That was one of my expectations for this week, was that they would find their offense. They still did not do that. Ole Miss took advantage. Ole Miss played really well against LSU in that game. So again, there's a lot of, the key word in each conference almost is parity, and I think we see that big time in the SEC. I think the parity in the SEC, the group of teams at the top, is very large compared to other conferences, where other conferences might have 1 or 2 really good teams, and then you've got a bunch of decent teams. But the SEC is just loaded with really good teams. Now, but again, do they have that elite team? I don't know. I don't know if they have an elite team, where the Big Ten might have a couple of elite teams, and the ACC and the Big 12 might have an elite team. So it's really interesting when you look at that. But big win for Alabama. We go to the Big Ten now. Oregon and Ohio State, I think, still at the top of the Big Ten. We saw that last night. Oregon looked like the better team. I know Penn State came back at the end, had a chance there, but Oregon looked like the better team throughout the game. And Penn State, I guess I was wrong. I thought they were going to figure it out this year. They were going to finally be able to win some big games. But once again, it's almost like deja vu with James Franklin, and I hate to talk about it, but with Drew Aller, an interception at the end of the game. It's just the same old with Penn State. They'll probably lose to Ohio State, go 10-2, make the playoff, win a game maybe. It's going to be the same story. That's just how it feels like with this Penn State team. When will they get over the hump? Maybe it's still this year. Maybe they beat Ohio State. but it doesn't seem like it. It just does not seem like they're putting the pieces together there. And just the clutch plays just didn't make them in this game. Now they did. I'll take that back. They did make some clutch plays to get to overtime, so give them some credit there. But Oregon looked really good. Dante Moore again continues to impress me. It's not the same player I saw at UCLA, and what a difference it makes when you've got talent around you. He has been phenomenal this year. The Oregon defense was really, really good in this game. They might be the best team in the Big Ten. Ohio State took care of business on the road at Washington. Tough environment, defensive battle there. But they wound up winning that game pretty comfortably. And so, again, it feels like Oregon, Ohio State are kind of at the top of the Big Ten. Penn State just isn't there yet. At least it doesn't seem like. They'll have their opportunity against Ohio State, and we'll see if they can change that narrative. But right now, it just looks like the same old Penn State. All right, let's go to number 3. I know Miami didn't play, but the ACC, it kind of seems like it's Miami and then everyone else because Miami's looked really impressive so far. And we thought maybe Florida State was on that level, and now you see them lose to Virginia. And I understand upsets can happen. You can have a bad game. Florida State is because of their offense, the way they run the football, there's going to be matchups where I think they do really well, and there are going to be matchups where they struggle. Again, their defense has to play better because you can't give up that many points. Virginia's offense was really going up and down the field in this game. But yeah, when you look at the ACC overall, I mean, who else is there? Georgia Tech had to go to overtime to beat Wake Forest. We thought that was maybe a team. We saw Louisville have to come from behind to beat Pitt. I thought Louisville had a chance to prove that maybe they were in this conversation. I mean, there's just no one really there in the ACC. Florida State still has the potential, I think, and maybe they can bounce back this weekend. But you know, if all these teams keep beating up on each other, I know this is crazy to say, what if Clemson kind of figures it out? And what if Clemson were to win out in the ACC? And let's say they lose to South Carolina. They go 8-4, but they somehow make it to the ACC championship. And then things start figuring things out, and they wind up winning the ACC, going to the playoff. Like, how crazy would that be? But yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. And I think it's, Florida State, if they lose to Miami, they've already got 2 losses. So it really feels like it's going to be Miami and then everyone else fighting for that number 2 spot in the ACC, unless Florida State can beat Miami, and then I think we know it's probably going to be those 2 teams. So that'll be a huge game coming up on Saturday. The Big 12 is kind of similar. I think it's Texas Tech, and then everyone else in the Big 12. You've got teams that I think have a better shot than others in this conference, but it does feel like there's a lot of parity, and again, parity's a big word. We'll talk about it more in just a second. You've got like Arizona State, TCU. That game was down to the wire, very close. Kansas State finally got a win over UCF, so UCF's not a contender really. We know that now. Cincinnati going on the road and beating Kansas. Maybe Cincinnati could make a run here in this conference. Baylor has looked pretty good. Utah dominated against West Virginia. West Virginia didn't have their quarterback, but still, that was an impressive win. Iowa State with a very impressive win over Arizona. Iowa State has kind of been, they've been winning close games. They finally put it together, and they really, beat Arizona easily. 39-14, the final score in that game. BYU still undefeated, but they had a close game against Colorado, who seems to be, one of the worst teams in the Big 12. So, yeah, I think it's really up for. I think Arizona State's probably going to be the team that emerges, but I think anyone could at this point. There is a ton of parity in the Big 12, but Texas Tech seems to have separated themselves. If Utah did what they did to West Virginia and Texas Tech did what they did to Utah, I think absolutely Texas Tech is the team to beat in the Big 12. And let's just talk about it across the board here. It's parity. The parity is insane this season. And, I think we might have some teams at the top, like 5 or 6 teams that are the elite teams this year. But then there is a ton of parity behind those teams. Just think about this. Think about all the teams that have played close games. And I'm going to change up how I do my top 25 tomorrow. And it's based off of tiers, and then it's based off of resumes. I'll explain more tomorrow. But just thinking about this, like Tennessee, Mississippi State, really close game. Tennessee, Georgia, really close game. Mississippi State, Arizona State, really close game. Arizona State, TCU, really close game. Like, you connect all the dots, and all of these teams are very similar. One play here or there could have changed the outcomes to these games. You look at Auburn, Oklahoma, close game. You look at, just all of these close games throughout college football. And again, it really, especially in the SEC, I think the SEC has a ton of parity there at the top. You look at Missouri playing a close game against Kansas. Kansas playing a close game against Cincinnati. Cincinnati playing a close game against Nebraska, who played a close game against Michigan. Like, all of these teams are playing close games because it's just a ton of parity. And I think that is a big takeaway for me. We just didn't see, any teams really emerge and blow out teams, I guess. It was just a lot more close games. And so it's going to come down to the teams that can win those close games. Those are the teams that are going to find their way into the college football playoff, outside of, again, the 5 or 6 teams that are elite that we know are going to be there. Behind those teams, there's going to be 3 or 4 spots where it's just going to be the teams that earn their way in, that win a lot of close games. Who will those teams be? It's very tough to predict, but that's just kind of the way I see it going the rest of the season. Again, several teams, few teams, however many it is, I haven't done my list yet, that have kind of emerged, and you feel like they're going to be in the playoff. These are the elite teams. And then behind them, again, who earns their way in. And just talking about the SEC, I don't think there is an elite team in the SEC, so it's going to be the teams that earn their way in by winning close games. Like Alabama took a huge step by beating Georgia. Georgia took a huge step by beating Tennessee. You're going to have 4 or 5 games and you've got to win maybe 3 of those close games, and if you do, you're going to get in the playoff. And the teams that lose 3 of those games are not going to get in. So it's going to be very, very fun in the SEC and really across college football with this parity this year. And of course, the transfer portal, I think, is a huge part of this. We just don't see teams really separating themselves. So a great weekend in college football. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It does slow down a little bit with week 6, but still we have some big games like Florida State and Miami. And we're going to continue to learn more about the college football playoff picture. Don't forget, on Monday nights here, it's the late night show, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Mark Rogers will be and I'll be joining, actually, Mark Rogers again this week at 10 o'clock Eastern time, where we will be live, and we'll take your calls and talk about everything college football. So make sure you join us again at 10 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow night.